So I'm here in the Pelion region in eastern Greece, and I'm making my way down along a series of footpaths out to the Aegean Sea. Apologies for the shakiness, but this is the landscape we're looking at here. I believe we're at about 1,600 feet elevation, and what's especially magical about this place is the diversity and composition of the forests here. Largely dominated by sweet chestnut, Castanea sativa, and also we see walnut is a quite common component of this landscape. I'm looking roughly southeast at this point. It doesn't take long before we find another unique set of specimens. These are the first two dawn red cedars that I've seen, which I believe is Metasequoia glyptostroboides. I'm assuming they're planted here. Beyond the spectacular views on the horizon off to the south and southwest, we note a landscape dominated by productivity. In the foreground there's a linden tree, and then we see an orchard of apples. Notice a few small peach trees, grapes, pomegranate. So for lack of a better term, here we can see this wind funnel actually swaying and being directed by the breeze, and channeling it down into the interior of the structure to aid with cooling through the warm months. Here's a stately European walnut tree, the Juglans regia, which are very common throughout this landscape. There are many examples of home-scale horticulture throughout the countryside here. Here we see a fairly mature pollarded poplar or aspen of some sort, with some pretty impressive straight growth. Some of the first shredded trees I've noticed so far: ilex, holly, I'm not sure for what purpose, and also we'll note the edge of citrus in the foreground here. A number of very small trees that are already producing. Fig trees abound here, with seemingly unlimited potential and tenacity in their growth. This tree in particular has one that seems to be begging for me to trial it. As I descend in elevation, the landscape begins to change. It becomes a bit drier and definitely a bit hotter. Figs become more prominent. We see a large set of walnuts in the background, and suddenly we start to find olive groves once again submerging. It's important to note the overall steepness of this landscape, which makes production very challenging. So it might not have been intentional, but there's no denying here that this chestnut has been coppiced, and as we know is the norm with chestnut, it responds quite well with vigorous growth, nice straight poles, and what's also worth noting is that we still have a pretty prolific nut crop on these. Can you count the number of fruiting species in this picture? Probably not, because the lighting's bad and this camera sucks. But I see citrus, walnut, kiwi, grapes, and probably a lot more. Very nice south-facing exposure here. Very heavily pruned olive that looks like it's got quite a few years under its belt, essentially coppiced, and still producing a respectable yield. Very familiar to many of the Appalachians out there. Here we see a close relative to the eastern redbud, Cercis canadensis. Also a member of the Cercis genus. It has a rounded leaf, a nice black locust-sized pod, and apparently also beautiful red flowers, flower buds that swell in the springtime. The pomegranate is a tree that apparently deals quite well with the dry climate here and often less than fertile topsoil. While we're reluctant to make any sweeping generalizations about species I'm otherwise unfamiliar with, we do have a specimen that looks very much like a gooseberry here, acting as a shrub layer companion to this olive canopy. While I'm completely unsure of the true history of this structure, this greenhouse, which now looks actually defunct, must have served an important purpose at some point. I'm now recalling that production of the gardenia is a common value-added livelihood here. People propagating these gardenias by layering plants that they're growing in their own property and then selling them at the market. So as we reach the coast, we see another citrus tree, but then directly adjacent, my very first medlar. So lo and behold, Greece does have an alder species.